What's up YouTube, it's Ghostwriter15 here, back at it again with another Edison format video. And today's video is going to be a side decking tier list. I figured I might as well make this video because the Ultimate Time Wizard is coming up this weekend for the NAWCQ. And hopefully this video helps you decide on what cards to side deck. So without further ado, let's just jump right into the video. Alright, so starting off with Cyber Dragon. I think Cyber Dragon is a very good card. It's very good going second against decks like Hero Beat, against Black Wings, against Gladiator Beast. It's also insane against decks like Gadgets or Machinas, because you can contact their monster to go for Fortress. I have this card as an A tier side deck card. Alright, next up is going to be Prohibition. Prohibition is a card that is very, very niche. I know you can call whatever you want, but it's very, very situational because, you know, they're not always going to have that card. I think it's only really good against Hero Beat just because you can call Alias and that shuts down a lot of cards in their deck. But besides Hero Beat, this card isn't good at all. It's definitely in the C tier category. Alright, next up we have Kaiku. So Kaiku, I think, is a card that's decent against like Vayu Turbo because it does prevent them from special summoning with Vayu's effect. And you can also banish the Vayu or the Sirocco in the grave. You can also banish Plague Spreader. So it is pretty nice. It also stops Necrogardna. With that being said, though, it is very easy to out. Like, Sirocco can just run it over, Raikou can pop it, Hamster can wall it, and then it brings out Raikou to pop it. And in other matchups, it doesn't really do much, so it's just for Vayu Turbo, and it's not even the best option that you can play. So I think it's like B tier. Alright, so next up we have Skill Drain. So Skill Drain is a card that is very, very good if you can play it, but the problem is that not many decks can actually play it. The only one that I think can like really consistently play it well is like Hero Beat Stun. Besides that, I don't think any other deck can play it. But it is really good against like Frogs. It's good against like Dragon Turbo. It's good against a lot of stuff because, you know, most decks need their monster effects to be able to function. But yeah, like I said, not many decks can actually play this card. So for that reason, I think it's like B tier. Alright, so next up is Dust Tornado. Dust Tornado is a card that is really, really good against Blackwing. You can also side it in against other decks, but it's more specifically for Blackwings because the card that you really need to get rid of against Blackwings is Black Whirlwind. That's the way the deck just gets too much advantage and destroys you. So if you're able to prevent Whirlwind from resolving, then you should be fine against Blackwings usually. I think it's very good. I think it's actually A tier. Alright, so now we have Snowman Eater. Snowman Eater is a side deck card that has been losing some popularity recently. Only like Hero Beat still plays it because it is a water monster, so that helps with Miracle Fusion. It's really good against decks like the Hero Beat Mirror Match. It's really good against Black Wings. It's also good against Gladiator Beast. You know, 1900 is very strong, and it gets rid of the problem. Whatever attacks into it, it can be destroyed. I don't think it's insane. I think there are better ways to deal with monsters. So yeah, I think it's like B tier. Alright, so next up we have Sirocco. Sirocco is just sided in against Blackwings because Sirocco pumps itself up for every single Blackwing on the field. It doesn't matter what side. So if your opponent's playing Blackwings and they have a lot of Blackwings on the board, you can make your own Sirocco become huge. So that's really nice. The only downside is that it does eat up your normal summon, and that can actually be a problem in certain decks. I think it's like at the top of B tier. Alright, so next we have Lightning Vortex. So Lightning Vortex is very, very niche. The only deck that I think should be playing it is like Dragon Turbo, or like maybe like Fish OTK or something like that. But anything that just loses to Floodgate monsters like Dyna and Vanity's Fiend. So I mean, you have to play it in those type of decks. Don't get me wrong, but it's not amazing in anything else. So if you're not playing those type of decks, then you should stay away from it. This card's like B tier. Alright, next up is Mind Control. So Mind Control has gotten very, very popular lately in the side deck. It's very good in the Value Turbo matchup because you can steal their Raikou, pop one of their cards, you can steal their Hamster, and if you're playing your own Raikou, you can bring out your own Raikou, and now you have the tempo advantage. Also, you can steal monsters to synchro summon them if you play a lot of tuners. So this card's very nice, very versatile. I think it's an A tier card. Alright, so next up is Shadow Mirror. Shadow Mirror is a really interesting one because it is very good against like zombies. It's very, well, it's not very good against Blackwings, but it's decent. I think it's actually a bit underrated against Blackwings. Like, sure, it doesn't stop Bora from special summoning itself, and it doesn't stop Kalut from the damage step pump, but it does stop a lot of good stuff like Blizzard, Gale, Sirocco from pumping. So I still think it's very strong. I think this card is actually underrated, and I'm going to put it in A tier. Alright, so now we have DD Crow. DD Crow has been cited for a very long time now, and for a good reason. The card's insane in certain matchups. Like, obviously you want it against like Dragon Turbo, it's pretty good. You banish any card they target for Magical Stone Excavation. It's very good against zombies, being able to banish like Plague Spreader or Mizuki from their graveyard. Also really good against Diva Hero to banish that Malicious in their grave. And against Value Turbo, it's also really nice to banish Value. So very, very versatile card. It can be sided in against a lot of matchups, even Hero Beat, because they play Hero Blast, and you can stop that with the Crow. So yeah, it's very, very versatile. I think it's like at the top of A tier. Alright, next up we have Super Poly. So Super Poly is a very interesting card in Edison format. At first I actually didn't know this card was even legal, but when I first saw it, it was being cited for the Hero Beat matchup, also for the Frog Mirror, but that's basically it. You only want to put it in those matchups, but even then, let's say you contact fuse your opponent's Absolute Zero to make your own Absolute Zero. That Absolute Zero that you use for fusion, it's still going to pop your new Absolute Zero that you just brought out to the field. So, I mean, it doesn't really accomplish a lot, and it's very niche. I think it's like C tier. Alright, so now we have Deck Devastation Virus, the card that everyone hates. And for a good reason, because this card is absolutely insane. Only a few decks can play it, but the decks can play it are unfortunately the best decks in the format. They are Blackwings and Value Turbo, and many other decks are like, they rely on monsters that are 1500 or lower. So yeah, it just absolutely destroys those decks. I think this card is S tier. Alright, so next up we have D-Fissure. So D-Fissure is an interesting one. Not many decks can play it. I think the only ones that actually do play it are like Gadgets, Six Samurais, and Gladiator Beast, you know. So all these like rogue tier 2-ish, tier 3 decks. So I mean, it's not insane because the top tier decks can't take advantage of it. But it still is really good against certain decks like frogs, like zombies. But yeah, just because not many decks that are actually good can take advantage of it, I don't think it's insane. I think it's like B tier. Alright, so next up we have Vanity's Fiend. So Vanity's Fiend is absolutely broken in Edison format. Being a 2400 beater that prevents special summons is broken. So it's very hard to actually run this thing over by battle without being able to special summon. Also, a lot of decks are going to struggle against it. Like, for example, Dragon Turbo, Frogs, Zombies. There's so many decks in the format that really need their special summons, and Vanity's Fiend just says no to all of that. I think if you're able to play this card, you should be playing it. I think it's S tier. Alright, so now we have Light Imprisoning Mirror. Similar to Shadow Imprisoning Mirror, it prevents a lot of monster effects, but for light monsters instead. But this one I think is not as good as Shadow Mirror, for the reason being that Fairy decks and Lightsworn decks and Christia decks are not very popular in the meta. You might eventually run into one or two at most, but like in a tournament, you shouldn't be expecting to play against this. It's not very common. I don't think you should be siding it. I think the card's like C tier. Alright, so now we have Imperial Iron Wall. So I've seen players try to side this against like Bayou Turbo, even Dragon Turbo. And every time I see that, it usually doesn't end up working out for them. The card's very easy to counter with like Hamster, Raikou, Dust Tornado, MST Heavy. Dragon Turbo can just go Black Rose, nuke it. They can go Brio to get rid of it. I don't think it's a good card in Edison format. This card eventually becomes a good card later down the road in Yu-Gi-Oh's history, but not in Edison format. I think it's like a C tier card. Alright, so now we have Consecrated Light. So Consecrated Light is only sided in for one matchup and one matchup only. That is Black Wings, which is arguably the best deck in the format. So that actually makes it a really good card because, you know, if you're countering one of the best decks in the format, you should be in a position to win. And that matchup, the Blackwing matchup, is very, very common. I think it's like the most common matchup in Edison format, so you should be expecting to play against a decent amount of Blackwings, and Consecrated Light does an amazing job against that deck. Like, you're just able to completely shut them down from being aggressive. They can't special, they can't synchro, they can't do none of that. So, yeah, I really like it, especially if you're able to protect it with a bunch of trap cards. It's insane. I think it's like A tier. Alright, so now we have Pulling the Rug. Pulling the Rug against Frog decks, against Diva Hero decks is really, really good. So those decks gain advantage from monsters that go +1 on normal summon. And there's not that many ways to actually prevent that. Like, you're not going to prevent your opponent from going +1 with like Caius, Ryza, Deep Sea Diva, Stratos, with that many trap cards. Like, the only way is like Solemn Judgment to negate the summon, but besides that, there's nothing else really game one. So Pulling the Rug actually does a really, really good job at preventing those easy +1s that Frog players and Diva Hero players are so used to. I think the card's really, really good. I say it's A tier. Alright, so now Mask Restrict. Mask Restrict, similar to Pulling the Rug, it prevents tribute summons from being able to happen, or just tributes in general, actually. And it's really good against a Frog deck because, you know, they can't go Caius, they can't go Ryza, they can't go Enemy Controller, they can't go Substitute, they can't play Soul Exchange. It's absolutely insane against that deck. There's a couple of decks that can't play this card, for example, Hero Beat or Blackwings, because Hero Beat plays Gemini Spark and Blackwings play Icarus Attack, so those are no-goes for those decks. But if you're not playing Blackwings or Hero Beat, then you should definitely be playing this card. I think it's A tier. Alright, so now we have Fossil Dyna. Similar to Vanity's Fiend, this card is absolutely broken against decks that rely on special summons such as Frogs and Dragon Turbo. However, the major downside to Fossil Dyna is that it's very small and easy to run over. So like things like Hard Trooper, Quackimiru Drago, Zombie Master can just easily run it over, and the problem is solved just by running it over. It's not too hard to deal with compared to like Vanity's Fiend, who is 2400 attack. But there are upsides that Fossil Dyna has that Vanity doesn't have. For example, you don't need to tribute summon, so you can just immediately drop it on summon. It does something right away. Also, if you're able to set this card and it gets flipped face up, it basically becomes a Regeki for special summon monsters, which is absolutely insane sometimes. So it's still very good. I think it's A tier. Alright, so now we have Mind Crush. Mind Crush is a card that I only see being cited for Dragon Turbo. And I get it. There are times where it is very strong to be able to rip red eyes from the opponent's hand. But that's not always going to happen. There's going to be times when Dragon Turbo does go Heavy Storm, Giant Trunade, and they don't have the red eyes in their hand. And now you're actually going to lose a card in your hand. And for the fact that this card is very niche, very specific, because like you're literally only just citing it against like Dragon Turbo, I don't think it's that good. I would say it's like B tier. Alright, so now we have Royal Decree. Royal Decree is a card that I think is absolutely insane. I might be a little biased on this one because I do play a lot of Dragon Turbo. And from my experiences, Royal Decree is broken because it basically guarantees that you don't have to worry about any back row. You're free to go off. You're free to combo. You're free to OTK if you can. I really like it. The card is absolutely insane. If you can play it, you should be playing it in, like, for example, Dragon Turbo, Lightsworn, Norlaris, those type of combo, quick OTK type of decks. I think it's an S tier card in those type of decks. Alright, so now we have Trap Stun. Similar to Decree, Trap Stun does stop traps. However, I don't think it's as good because it's only a one-turn thing. Yeah, usually one turn is not going to be enough to be able to win the game. But I do think this card is still very good against, or if you're using decks that try to combo off right away but also need their trap cards. The biggest example would be like Gladiator Beast. You just go Bestiari pop, Gazara's pop, tag out, all that shenanigans. It's really good in those type of decks. So it has uses. I wouldn't say it's terrible, but I don't think it's amazing. I think it's like B tier. Alright, so next up we have Macrocosmos. Similar to D-Fissure, not many decks actually can side this. And I think this is actually even worse than D-Fissure because it is slower. I just think D-Fissure is better in this format, but both of them are very niche. I think this is like C tier. Alright, so last but certainly not least, we have Royal Oppression. Royal Oppression is an absolutely insane card. Probably the most oppressing, pun intended, and most popular Floodgate card in Edison format. It prevents special summons. And the decks that take advantage of this card are the top tier decks of the format, such as Vayu and Blackwings. So Vayu and Blackwings are insane because of this card. And I think this card is something that you should be playing if you're playing those type of decks. I think it's S tier. Alright, so there you have it. This is my tier list for the upcoming Edison side deck meta for the Ultimate Time Wizard NAWCQ tournament. I probably missed out a few cards that I could have added to this list. Let me know in the comment section down below what you think about this. Maybe there's some cards that you disagree with. If you like this type of content, like and subscribe. This is Ghost Rider 15 signing out.